Here's the thing, any type of possessed figurine, whether it be dream state, reality, futuristic, freaks me the fuck out. Right, so this is gonna be a multiple parter. I don't even know how many pages this one is. It's very, very long. Demonic premonition. This is really long, but here it goes. When I was 15, my grandmother had a stroke, and our family was told that she'd probably die. She was living in Mexico. So my mom and all of her siblings that lived in the States drove over and met up with the rest of their siblings to be with her. We were left behind, and that same night, I had a very vivid dream. I'm so sorry to hear this. This is already tragic. In this dream, it's myself and my younger cousin inside all my grandparents' house, and it's almost completely empty. All of the big furniture, like the dining tables, the couches, the coffee table, the buffet table, things with little figures and picture frames, were also missing. The only things remaining were the curtains and a huge frame with a carpet-type painting. It wasn't a painting, but it was a framed carpet with a landscape scenery. It was huge and hanging on the wall. Anyways, he and I are in there by ourselves, and we look right through the windows that have lace curtains, and we see that under the carport porch there's a group of people standing in a circle with a casket in the middle. But they all seemed to be frozen or paused, and you couldn't really see who they were. It was just kind of like figures. For context, in Mexico, most families hold a viewing in their home, and it happens like the very next day after someone dies, and then they're buried or cremated the following day. It's not 2 to 3 weeks like it is in the US. It's a matter of 2 to 3 days from death in Mexico. So in my dream, I wasn't shocked to see a viewing happening, but I wasn't aware of who it was. For more context, this cousin of mine growing up would hang out with me when I would visit. He was odd though, he just silently followed me everywhere, so he was doing the same thing in my dream. While I'm looking around in the empty living room area, all of a sudden, a swarm of bats fly in and start flying all over the place. He and I start dodging and ducking, and we run into the hallway on the left and into my uncle's bedroom. When we're in the room, it was completely empty, except for these 3 little figures that my grandma used to have in the living room on the buffet table-ish thing. I never paid them too much attention, but they were always a little creepy to me. So these figures are sort of like gnomes, but not really. They're 2 boys and 1 girl. They start moving around rapidly, but their faces remain frozen. Their expression might change and look more sinister, but it wouldn't change like a human's. It would just be different. Not sure if that really makes sense. They start making fun of us and trying to push us around and trip us even though they're tiny, maybe about a foot tall. And they say that they've always been watching our family. They are the reason why everything my family has experienced has happened. I'll explain later. They say that they have a hold on us, that we won't be able to break it, and that they will make sure to destroy us. For some reason, in my dream, I knew they were demons, and in the movies, when they're trying to exorcise them, they always ask them their names. I knew or remembered this in my dream, so I demanded that they tell me their names. I don't remember who the names belong to, which little gnome statue specifically. My dream was in Spanish, by the way, so they told me their name in Spanish. The names were Envida, Envy, Sisana, Discord, and Terror. That was the end of my dream. I'm aware I butchered the names, okay? I'm aware you don't have to tell me in the comments. I'm just throwing it out there. I was pretty freaked out when I woke up. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I would have been freaking out for sure. For some reason, I knew that the dream was important, so I tried dissecting it and trying to find some meaning to it. I settled on assuming that my grandmother would die and that the 3 gnomes, statues, demons, whatever, were my grandma's 3 youngest. She has a total of 9 kids, but the youngest 3, which were 2 boys and 1 girl, were always beefing and causing problems for the whole family. I had tried to tell my sister and my cousins about the dream, but I could never finish because they'd always interrupt to make fun or crack jokes. I felt so stupid, and I'd just stop. My grandmother didn't die right away. This was in March. She developed dementia from the stroke and my mom took her in. My uncle was living with us at the time and he would help take care of her. We all did. She died that same year in December. That December that she died, my uncle and my other uncle decided to go party in Mexico. They didn't know that she was going to die, so they didn't see the harm in doing that. When my mom and aunts reached out to them to let them know that the doctor said she'd be dying within a day or 2, they got really drunk for some reason. Maybe their way of coping. Well, my grandmother didn't last a day or 2, she died that same night. They were too plastered to drive over, so they didn't get to see her before she died. To make matters worse, when we had her viewing and cremation a couple weeks later, they didn't come. They figured if they missed seeing her last moments alive, there would be no point to go to her viewing. I don't know, that was just their logic. My uncle who lived with us always struggled with an addiction. When he was on his addiction, he was really scary and violent, which was really sad to us because he was the kindest, most gentle, and generous person when he was sober. He absolutely loved spending time with us. He had a stutter. And when he was on his addiction, it went away. That was always a sign that he was back with his addiction. When he was in Mexico, my mom and aunts put him in rehab several times. In Mexico, they can force you or kidnap you and put you in rehab. When he lived with us, he always remained sober though. He'd only relapse when he was back in Mexico. After my grandma died, my uncle started drinking a lot. And one time that we were all drinking with him, he admitted that he regretted not coming to see his mom's final moments and said that he always thought about taking his own life. After that, he moved back to Mexico and took over my grandmother's house. His excuse was that he had to protect it, because in Mexico, houses that stay empty, even for a few days, will get raided by criminals and addicts. They'll strip the wires and metal to sell them. Him being there by himself led him back to his addiction for a few years. When we'd visit him, we would feel so uncomfortable. My cousin got into his addiction as well. The one that was in the dream with me. He became aggressive and would honestly scare the crap out of me. When I had my dream, I was like 15 and he was 12. So we got into an addiction around 13 or 14. This is so fucking sad. Like, why is this? I'm so sorry. Like, I have to remind myself sometimes, you guys, that these are your guys, like, this is your guys' lived experience. It breaks my heart. Like, you guys are so fucking strong. No words. I have no words. Dolls being possessed, figurines being possessed, all of the above are creepier than shit. OP, thank you so much for sending this in. This is just going to be part one. The story is very long, so I am right now, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 more pages. And I love when I get multiple parters. I might read several stories just so I can post these like 2 in one day or something. I don't know. But here's the thing. Okay. This is so sad. This is breaking my heart, my friend. Now I know you said that you wanted me to change the names, and that is becoming more and more difficult. So I'm going to do better in the next video, hopefully. But I don't know much about Mexico. I don't know much about beliefs in their originality. I don't know a lot about Catholicism. I know that it is very relative to Christianity in a way. You know, I know that there's plenty of differences, but the one thing that I can say about Catholicism as a for sure fact is that they mourn differently. They mourn differently. And people who practice and people who live in Mexico and originate from Mexico, it is a whole different process than what we experience here in America. So it's kind of interesting to hear that firsthand from someone's lived experience. You know, it's so difficult when you don't know every culture and you don't know how every culture aligns with death. And I think it's important that we educate ourselves. Luckily, I get educated through you guys. And if I can't find the education, I look elsewhere and I find it. But I have learned so much over these years, and I feel like this story has something to teach me. I love you guys. I will see you in part 2 and catch you in the next one. And when I look at my background right now, I'm so excited. Bye. Part 2. The last time I saw my uncle, I was 19. My sister and I went to Mexico and decided to visit him while we were there. But when we got to my grandmother's house, we were very uncomfortable. It was stuffy and tense. Like I felt like I was holding my breath. We felt like we could not be in the house, so we told my uncle to come out with us to get dinner. We went to a taco spot, and he was very clearly on his addiction, but he seemed like himself, sort of. When he was in active addiction, he was very clearly angry and aggressive, but not this time. I sort of begged him to come back with us and to just forget about the house. He said he'd think about it and genuinely seemed like he was considering it. He had a great time, but when we went back to my grandma's house, he was like his usual addict self. He was speaking very aggressively and ranting about different things. He was saying that someone was sending bats to come get him. He said that sometimes there were several at a time. He said he'd swat them with a broomstick and then step on their heads. I remembered my dream and thought that was weird. Then in January of 2016, we got the call that they'd found him dead. I'm so sorry. We all just assumed it was an overdose, or perhaps that he'd gotten into some trouble due to his addiction. We drove over because, again, things in Mexico happen quite quickly. The viewing would be the next day. Once we got there, there were different people at my grandmother's house. It's a small town, so it was people that my mom and aunts knew, but I didn't. His ex-wife and kids were there too. Then we found out it was suicide. We were devastated and shocked, but I'm not the crying type. For some reason, I don't really cry ever. But I was sort of like disassociated, I think. Like, I was just silent and not really talking, but I felt so uncomfortable and afraid, like the whole house felt so thick and tense. His blood was still in the room. He had apparently shot himself with a rifle and hadn't found him for a few days, so the house smelled like a dead person. It was really bad. Several family members arrived from all over Mexico and the United States, and we unanimously felt afraid. We slept outside in cars. I think my mom and a couple aunts did sleep in my grandma's old room, but the rest of us slept in our cars. I've never felt so much fear and cold in my entire life. I kept my car on with the heater, and the cold was still unbearable. I kept feeling presences around my car. My older cousin slept in the car with me, for context. He was in his 30s at the time and is one of those macho alpha guys, but he woke me up twice to tell me that he was afraid, which scared me more. I barely slept that night. The next day was the viewing, and the whole town was there. Remember, I said that my uncle was sober. He was the kindest and most generous person. So a ton of people were there to pay their respects because he was very much so loved. Isn't addiction a crazy thing? I'm just going to pop this in here really quick because you can take like the most truthful, the kindest, the most heartwarming person, and it will absolutely devastate you the second that they become an addict. And it's crazy to think that someone who could be so strong and so kind and so like a beacon of light can fall down that rabbit hole. And it fucking sucks. It fucking sucks. It truly does. And addictions can mean way more than just alcohol and drugs. There are other things that people can be addicted to that can absolutely ruin them all the same. I sat under the car porch next to my favorite cousin, and his coffin was in the center. It was really creepy because the funeral company set up at this light fixture over his coffin, and it was a red light. It just looked super scary and sort of demonic. His ex-wife's family asked to do this type of prayer where people took turns standing around his coffin and praying. I'd never seen that before. I wanted coffee, so I got up and went inside. Every time I went inside, I'd feel super overwhelmed and that tense air again, like the tension was so thick. I always felt like I couldn't breathe. And then I froze. I realized that the inside of the house was completely empty, like my dream. I looked out the window with the lace curtains and saw a group of people surrounding the coffin, but it actually looked scarier with the slight red glow. That's insane. That's insane. So your dream did actually happen. Like you literally, quite literally saw the future in your dream. That's insane. I was frozen and I couldn't move. I started to feel a presence behind me. I turned and there was nothing. I felt like I had to run to my uncle's room, which is where he had shot himself. It was completely empty, except there was a little altar where his little puddle had been. I sort of waited for a bit to see if something would happen, but I couldn't take it. I felt like I was in fight or flight mode. My muscles were stiff and cramped, and I was practically hyperventilating, not to mention that I had already had goosebumps for the past 2 days, but they were much worse now. I felt like all of my hair was standing up. Like, I'm not even trying to sound dramatic, but I felt my hair was being pulled. I could feel every single hair standing. I know that sounds dramatic. It doesn't sound dramatic. And just throwing it out there, okay, since I can't speak right now. Everything having to do with the paranormal is dramatic to me. Everything, because the way I could never believe this. Like, it's just fucking so insane. I run outside and sit next to my cousin again, and she asks what's wrong. I tell her everything, and I lead her inside to show her what I'd seen in my dream and what everything looked like. She looked shocked and said she wanted to throw up. I asked her why. She asked me if I'd been there when the twins, these cousins of ours that are twins, were talking about the last time they saw our uncle alive. I said no. She was about to cry and said that they told a few of them that my uncle had been saying that those three were trying to make him kill himself, that they were always talking to him, that they'd leave ropes laying around, knives laying around, and his rifle laying around, telling him to just do it, that it was just a matter of time before he'd give in. The twins would ask him, who are those three? What are you talking about? He wouldn't necessarily call them demons, but he'd refer to them as those cabrones, assholes, and said it was 2 guys and a girl. The twins would tell him that it was all in his head, but he'd get mad and say that they weren't. Holy shit. Okay, so that's part 2. This is getting so intense. Like, I'm grateful that I get to read it all at once just in separate videos, but holy shit, you genuinely predicted what was going to happen. Like, you didn't know who it was, and granted, you didn't see the red light, but like, you saw everything else playing out, and now now you know that whatever these 3 things were, which I agree, assholes, because look where the fuck we are. Those 3 things were tormenting your uncle. They were genuinely tormenting him. Like, that is the most insane thing, to even think that there's something out there that can do that. And it fucking rips my heart out of my chest for you, in the fact that this happened to him. You know, I don't want to say that they were successful, because then they win. You know what I mean? We're not giving them that power. But it's just crazy, because there's so much that was happening beforehand, and he tried to talk about it. He tried to tell people, and here we are to this story, and his life, your lived experience, his lived experience, everything that's happening. This is just insane. I can't wait to see you guys in part 3. Let's go. This is part 3. So the twins' mom also said that one of these nights they last saw him, they spent the night with him at my grandmother's house, and that at 3 a.m. she woke up because she heard multiple voices, one of them being a woman's voice. So she got up from one of the bedrooms and opened the bedroom door, and clear as day, she heard the voices. She decided to go into the living room to see who was there. When she walked into the living room, she saw my uncle standing with his face against the closed living room door, talking to himself in different voices. My cousin and I were super freaked out. In the following days, we told some of our other cousins about my dream and the similarities with what happened to my uncle. A few of us were sort of traumatized for like a month or 2. Oh, I can only imagine. This is absolutely traumatizing, 110%. Not really being able to sleep or having insomnia or panic attacks. I carried that heavy feeling with me for a long time, from when I'd be inside the house. We've tossed around theories and ideas of the meaning of the dream. My aunt, which is one of the younger aunts from the 3 that I thought were represented by the gnomes, demons, cabrons, as your uncle would say, was already on an addiction when this happened. But a couple years later, she ended up being really into this addiction in the streets, and caught some type of disease and died. So much fucking loss in this story, fuck. My other uncle is still alive, but his life has always been pretty weird. Like, he isn't within an active addiction like them, but he has really bad luck. Like, nothing he does ever works out. He ended up selling my grandmother's house, but blew through the money right away. Before my uncle sold the house, a friend of the family stayed to take care of the house, but he said he couldn't do it anymore. He said there were a few different entities that were always hitting him or pushing him, that one even showed him a noose and tried to coerce him into using it. Not sure if it was literally hung out in front of him or if he just imagined it. He tried sleeping outside of the house, but even that didn't stop them. So he just abandoned ship. To be honest, I would have done the same. I'm right there with you, my friend. I always wanted to go back and figure out what was going on. Sorry for making this so long, but just to add a little bit more context. Side note, that's not going to be the first time that this OP says that, which is totally fine, but I think it's cute. Even as a small child, I was always afraid of my grandmother's house, and so were my cousins and my sisters, especially these 2 rooms. The one that belonged to my uncle who died, where he killed himself, and the room that connected to that one. So a Jack and Jill. It was a Jack and Jill room. Was it just a door that was connecting it? Was it a closet? Was it a bathroom? Okay. I have questions. As a kid, it just had a bunch of messes in it. We'd sleep in it for the holidays when me and like 20 other cousins would come for Christmas. But after we grew and less family would come over, it just became a storage room with a lot more junk. But there was always something about that room that I couldn't even stand by the closet door in broad daylight, because I felt like something was behind that door, like if something would just pull me in. A year or 2 before my uncle died, we went to visit and he asked if I wanted to go out with him. I said no. I figured he'd go to the brothel or crack house or something, and I didn't want to be there in that situation. My sisters, mom, and a couple of my aunts were sleeping in the 2 women's room, and since it's just me and my uncle, I slept in his room, but he went out. It was summer, and in that part of Mexico, it gets really hot and apparently really cold. The AC unit that was attached to the window was old and didn't really cool down properly and would make a loud thump every time it would turn on after turning it off. I was sleeping alone in his room, but I couldn't sleep at all. The pressure in there was so thick that I could feel it around me. Have you ever had someone run their hand over your arm without actually touching you, but somehow you could still feel it? Too many times. Too many times. That reminds me of a story that I'm gonna film after I'm done reading this, because that's wild. Not sure if that makes sense, but I could feel that across my whole body, everywhere. I pulled the covers over me because I was so afraid. I was stuck and couldn't get up to go back to sleep in the other room. And every time the AC would turn back on, it would make that loud thump that would make my heart jump and pound. And that pressure and feeling would just close in on me. I could still feel it even with the blanket. And to make matters worse, I hear my mom screaming, but I was paralyzed. I couldn't get up to see what was going on. It turns out that my sister had gotten up for something and was walking towards the bed, and my mom saw a really tall and big man standing over her. It was my sister, but she's not tall and big at all. My mom swears she saw someone else. They laugh about it now, but it's still strange to me. Sorry, I know this is long. Told you. A few years later, after all of this, I was maybe 25 years old. I got really sick. I'd get these really high fevers like 105 to 106, and my body aches and horribly sore throat that even extra strength Tylenol couldn't help at all. I ended up going to the ER a couple times, and the third time they decided to keep me. At this point, I couldn't breathe properly and my voice was hoarse. I was there for 8 days. What was weird is that I couldn't sleep. Every time I'd close my eyes, I would see very vivid, demonic, and graphic things. Really bad. It was kind of like a Nightmare on Elm Street movie where they were so sleep deprived that even if they just closed their eyes without actually sleeping, they'd see things. That was happening to me. I'd just close my eyes and immediately the images would pop up again. One of those nights in the hospital, I decided that this must be happening for a reason and that I just needed to see what was being shown to me. Are you psychic? Are you psychic? Are you a medium? What's happening? What? I decided to close my eyes and just watch. It was a few minutes of really demonic, graphic, and gory images, and then I fell asleep and started dreaming. I was in my grandma's house, and it was like another dimension or something. The best way I can describe it is like being in the upside down, like in Stranger Things, where everything is just dark, light, nighttime, but there's like particles floating everywhere. I don't know. It was a dream, lol. So I walk through the front gate and the doors of the living room is open. It's all dark and empty in there, but there are little demonic shrines with candles scattered throughout the place. I walk towards the hallway to my uncle's room, and there are bigger and scarier shrines. And then I walk into the last room, the scarier one. In the center of the room, there's a pretty deep crater with a huge shrine inside, with body parts and bones and demonic items and candles. Something just told me that this was what had a hold of me. And that is why I was sick. So I jump into the crater and start destroying everything. I start smashing the candles, the statues, the bones. I start cursing it and telling it that it doesn't have control over me and that God is with me and it can't harm me. I woke up from my dream. I woke up with energy and I could breathe fine. My voice wasn't coarse anymore. The nurse took my temperature and it had gone down to like 99 or something. What's so funny is that the nurse said something like, "Oh, it's about to be the witching hour, so your fever is likely to go back up again." And it did, but it never went as high as it had been previously. In the end, they couldn't really figure out what was wrong with me after running a ton of tests. They ended up saying that I was likely suffering from really bad stress and an accumulation of bad eating habits, not exercising, and bad sleep, which could be true, but I don't know. That's just what happened when I was at the hospital. I know this is already super long, but if you'd like to hear about my cousin's other experiences at my grandmother's house, let me know. Absolutely the fuck we do. I feel like that was a lot for a 3-parter. I truly can't wait to hear your guys' thoughts on this. You were so sweet and everything that you said prior to this. I didn't want to include it because it had your name and I didn't really want to I just didn't want to put it in there. And then you left at the end of it like a cute little smiley face. Like how you are so optimistic with everything you've experienced and everything that's been happening is absolutely insane to me. The comparison to Stranger Things, insane. Count me out. I'm good. I don't want to live that. I think that whatever had a hold of you, you definitely demolished it in your dream. I think that whatever it was, your subconscious gave you the opportunity to fix it. And it kind of feels like whatever this thing was feeding off of you and your family. And in Mexico, families are huge, 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 huge part of the culture and a lot of people. So this could have been really dangerous. I'm really proud of you. Thank you for sending this in again. And I love you guys. I can't wait to hear your comments on this one. Bye. Moving into a brand new house and finding a rod for curtains hanging diagonally in the center of a room would send me straight the fuck back out of that house, I'm telling you what right now. To start by saying, I love watching your content. I'd like to be anonymous, so for this, use the name Jane for myself if I need to in this story. I don't mind if you post my experience, but English is not my first language, so pardon me if anything is grammatically incorrect. So far, you're doing fabulous. I moved into my current house 8 years ago. It was a newly made villa and it was empty for quite a while before we moved in. No one else had lived in it before us. We were all livid to be living in such a big house and started unpacking from the first day. There are 2 floors to our house, and the upstairs consists of 4 bedrooms and a maid's room at the end of the hallway. The room that was to be mine was the bedroom at the end of the hallway, near the maid's room. For context, as you enter my room, there is a window that faces the door with window blinds and a rod to close and open them. My mom went into my room to put my boxes inside, and she saw that the rod of the blinds was horizontal instead of vertical. It was horizontal mid-air as if someone were holding it that way. For a solid minute, my mom kept staring at what she was seeing, and she broke out of her staring spell when the rod started swinging back and forth, as if it were to let go by whatever was holding it in mid-air. I didn't find out about this story until I was older, by the way. But this is what my mom experienced personally on the first day of us moving in. For a first impression, we're not doing very well, are we? This wasn't the only experience that happened. For context, I'm Muslim, and I remember the days following us setting everything up in the house. So I'm watching TV and I hear my parents leave. All good, no worries. 5 minutes of them having left, I hear the fridge open, which is weird because I thought all my siblings had left with my parents. I get up from the couch and walk over to the window that looks into the kitchen, and I see that the fridge is open. For some context, the fridge is placed in the hallway that leads to the pantry in such a way that when the fridge door opens, it basically covers the entrance of this hallway and the person behind the fridge door, so that the fridge is open and I see a head with short hair that looks like it belongs to one of my brothers. The fridge itself is not very tall, but it seemed that whichever one of my siblings it was crouched a bit to look more at the second shelf of the fridge. I don't say anything and just walk all the way into the kitchen entrance and head towards the hallway to the fridge. When I get there, the fridge is closed and no one is there, which is heavily weird because it would have taken me like 30 seconds to go towards the kitchen entrance from the TV room. And there's no other exit for the kitchen, so whoever I saw rummaging through the fridge, where did they go? I didn't hear any sounds of running away either. At this point, I'm very freaked out and very paranoid. I search the whole house for my siblings and I call out to them as well, but I see no one is home and neither does anyone answer my calls. I told my mom about it a bit later in the night after she had come home. Another experience that we all collectively as a family experienced was that one evening. We're all in bed doing our nightly routines. I was reading a book as I always do before bed, and my parents were doing theirs in their room. My siblings were in their rooms. It was a nice, calm, quiet evening until we heard the most shrillest, loudest scream ever come from the stairs. My room is the closest to the stairs. My parents and siblings come running towards my room and ask why I screamed so loudly. I tell them I wasn't the one who screamed and that I also heard it. We were all so freaked out that we slept in my parents' room that night. My older brother also talked about how he felt scared in his room alone and would consistently sleep in my younger brother's room. Stuff would constantly disappear from our house, money, chocolate boxes especially. My mom told me about how one time she was counting money from her purse and it was $700. I'm telling the currency in dollars, but that's not the currency in the country I live in. And she counted the money a few more times before putting it back in her purse, and the first 2 times it was $700. The third time there was only $500 in counting. My mom was so confused. She laid the money out on the bed and counted, but $200 weren't there anymore. She looked everywhere. Maybe she dropped it somehow and didn't notice, but she never found those $200. At a loss of more money than that. My mom would buy boxes of chocolates to gift to friends and would keep them hidden from us kids, but they would always go missing. And my mom knew it wasn't us because her hiding spots were places places we had no business being in, like the pantry. The pantry consisted of dry stuff like rice and flour. Anyways, after experiencing all of that, my mom took the help of a Iraqi and got raquah done for our house, and we've had no experiences since. I know I pronounced a lot of those words incorrectly, and I'm so sorry for that. OP, thank you so much for sending in this experience. This is quite terrifying, isn't it? It sounds like whatever you were dealing with was a prankster, like a trickster, like they were purposefully messing with you. It almost sounds like fairies, but I think it was a little bit more sinister than a fairy would have been, even though fairies can be very creepy. Okay, don't come for me in the comments. I'm just saying it sounds like whatever this was, it's almost like they were saying like this is our house. The fact that they started messing with you on your very first day and messing with your mom on your very first day, it's almost like they were trying to make a first impression, like I mentioned. Very creepy, scary. Don't really like the whole random person in the fridge, didn't know who it was, no one's calling out, no one's in the house. Very odd. And it definitely would have sent me back out the front door the exact way that I came. Again, I say this in a lot of videos when it comes down to people purchasing homes or moving into new places. Who has the fucking money to put down on a brand new place and then just randomly bounce out because you think it's haunted? Not the fuck me, bitch. I don't have that kind of money. So I would have had to stay my ass there too, and I probably would have went to a Catholic priest because that's what we have here. Just saying. I love you guys, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. I will catch you in the next one. Still trying to get everything worked out. There's a lot, like I said, in plenty of videos going on behind the scenes for me right now that's kind of preventing me from doing all the things that I want to do, i.e. my merch and my podcast. So I am really hopeful that I'll be able to start it soon. I just ask you guys to be patient with me. A lot of this stuff is out of my control that I'm going through right now, so I'm just doing my best with what I have. And I love you. I hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Crosses being turned upside down or thrown across a room, you can count me the fuck out, okay? That's a knock to the Holy Trinity if I ever heard of one, okay? Hi, so I follow a lot of accounts like this, and you probably won't read this, lol. Oh, well, you were wrong about that. But I figured I had a pretty spooky experience that I wanted to share. A few years ago, maybe like 5, I lived in Arizona. Myself, my parents, and siblings used to live in this house, and it was a fairly nice place, at least I thought. We lived here about 3 years. At the time, I was 14 or 16 years old, and at this point, this is not the first time I've ever experienced paranormal activity, but I have yet to experience anything other than possible skinwalkers living in Maine. I've personally had a lot of experience with mimics in the past. Like I'd be outside and hear my mom calling for me repeatedly, and she wouldn't have been home, etc. In this specific house, whatever entity was there really liked me, and I know saying that sounds very self-centered or narcissistic, but there were several points in time where my dad would be awake late at night and hear me walking around, running down the halls and knocking on his door and whispering. He would go yell at me for, being up that late and bothering everyone. I'd be fast asleep. This other time, my older sister went out on a walk and repeatedly kept hearing me running up behind her, saying her name, then hiding behind the wall we had near the sidewalk. And that happened about 4 times before she came home to confront me about it. But I was grounded at the time and couldn't leave my room, so that's another instance. There was also several times where my dad would hear me yelling from upstairs in my room. We had a house rule of no yelling across floors because it's loud and the other person probably can't hear you anyways. That's a very good rule. And obviously, he would yell back. My mom would always be confused because it would always be when I wasn't home or I was outside. It was very odd. In the same house, there was a time, and I don't know if it was the same entity or something else entirely, but myself, my older sister, and 2 little siblings were hanging out up in the room watching TV or something. Our parents weren't home, and all of a sudden, we hear a loud crash from downstairs. So we obviously were panicked, and my older sister grabbed like a broom, lol. We went downstairs, and our family cross, which we've had through all 4 houses we've lived in at this point, was all the way across the house and shattered on the floor. We didn't know how it happened, but I have a feeling it wasn't normal or just wind or something else. Also, that house is where my sleep paralysis started. It was always so weird because I would be asleep and stay asleep throughout, but things would grab my legs and arms and just pull. It was really scary. There was one time where it pulled me off the bed entirely. And another time, I was asleep and my pin board, which was nailed to the wall, had been going across my room, and I literally was so sick of it, I got up and put it on the floor next to the wall. LMAO. But anyways, that's all for my rant. I love your videos. OP, thank you so much for sending this in. I absolutely am gonna read your story. There are very few stories that I have not read, just a side note for you guys. This actually sounds like it's something that was absolutely terrifying your entire family. Like, it was terrorizing you guys. It sounds like it didn't want you in the house. And honestly, I don't think that it's narcissistic or self-centered, in the very least, to say that it was very attracted to you. The thing about the attraction when it comes down to demonic entities is that it wants whoever is considered the weakest spiritually. Bless you a cajillion times. Oh my goodness. It goes after the weakest link spiritually, right? So if someone is young and not like super hard up on their faith, it's going to go off after that specific person because it's easier to manipulate, to lie, to deceive, and to kind of enter them as a host or to scare them the most. So it's not self-centered or narcissistic to say that. Granted, I don't know you in real life, but I'm going to assume that none of those things are accurate for you just based off of your writing. So I think that it mimicking you was just another way to kind of terrorize you. Like, your family was constantly thinking that you were doing these things, right? So it's a way to kind of weight you down and break you. Does that make sense? Honestly, this is terrible and horrific to say the least, especially the sleep paralysis. Anything that can fucking pull me in my sleep has got to go, or at least I do, because I'm not fucking dealing with that. I like my sleep, okay? I will be fighting some fucking ghosts. I love you guys. I hope you have a great day. May 21st is my birthday, and I really hope that it's a better day than what I've been having because it's been really hard lately. But I love you guys, and I hope you're having a great day. Listen, autocorrect and ghosts communicating with one another is just not for me. That's not okay. New ghosts. I believe I told you about my closet ghost who tried to unalive me, and Katie, a child ghost who's just kind of creepy sometimes. But I've gotten 2 new spirits within my home since then, and 3 stories for you. The first one is the most recent, as of last week, but one night I was just laying in bed as normal when my door flew open, slammed shut, and then the curtains I had just closed. I saw a figure outside, flew them open. I sat for a second in silence before my friend, who I was on a call with, said, "Hey, are you there, man?" And I responded, "Yeah, haunted house, weird stuff, the norm." Then I felt a weight land on my legs, and my legs suddenly felt like there was lead running through my veins, heavy and painful. A hand landed on my chest, and I felt like I was about to vomit. A deep, creepy voice said, "Curtains stay open," and it was gone like nothing happened. When I looked out the window, the tall figure I had seen, now a man taller than normal, maybe 7 feet, with glowing blue eyes, was staring at me. We locked eyes for a second, and he grinned, unnaturally toothy and huge. The second story isn't as creepy. My friend and I were on a call talking about ghosts, and he said his grandma, most of his family is deceased and haunts this house, hadn't been home. And I said, "Oh, weird, because I have a new spirit in my home." I described her. Short, squat, shuffles a bit, opens my door, and if I spot her, she leaves. Right at that moment, the ghost came in and said, "Mary?" And I said, "Who's Mary?" And my friend responded, "My grandma always called me Mary, even though my name is Alex." I haven't seen her since. I think she went home, but it was kind of weird. The third story is old. When I moved to my current home, the attic door was blocked and locked. I thought nothing of it and went in. Immediately, the door shut, and I turned on my phone flashlight. I heard a voice say, "I can't move. Come here." So I shined the light towards where I heard the voice. A giant figure, maybe 8 feet, was crouched in within this 6-foot attic. He turned weirdly, reached towards me, but I watched him have to retract his hand almost like it burned. The longer I looked, the weirder he looked. Arms long enough to reach his ankles, legs bent almost like a dog's face, always unnaturally grinning, but his mouth not moving when he spoke. I backed up and left, and he said, "But I'm so hungry," and I heard him running just before I locked and blocked the door. My room was a slant where the attic is for support, and sometimes I'll hear him scratching at the slant, saying he's hungry. But he can't leave the attic, as I put salt around the doors and windows of the attic, and he can't come close to me anyway. He always gets that burn when he comes within 5 or 6 feet. Also weird enough, when I finished typing that story, my autocorrect read "No, he didn't" across the top 3-word suggestions. OP, thank you so much for sending in this story. I do remember your story. That is absolutely crazy. I read a lot of stories, so sometimes it's hard for me to recall all of them, and sometimes they kind of blur together, but this one I do remember specifically. And I'm just wondering, like, are you a medium? I can't remember if I said that in the last video, but it definitely feels that way this time. It feels like you have some sort of special connection with spirituality in general. I don't necessarily think that it's just the house. I think that things are just attracted to you because you can see them, feel them, hear them, experience them in ways that a lot of other people can't. Does this make it any less creepy? No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. But I do know that people who are subjected to more paranormal, spiritual things typically are a lot more susceptible because they're mediums or psychics or something of the nature that is just ultimately connected to spirituality. Honestly, the first 2 stories wouldn't have scared me personally. I would have just assumed that, like, maybe you were the person that was closest to the one on the phone, and that maybe a ghost was like, I don't want the sunshine coming in the room, so just keep the goddamn curtains closed. But the last one is the one that would freak me out the most, because whatever that is sounds very fucking demonic. It sounds like it wants to legitimately eat you, right? I don't know if you have some type of protective aura and that's why it keeps getting burned, but that's really what it sounds like. And at the end of the day, thank God. Thank God for that, because hell no, don't fucking touch me, don't crawl towards me, don't run towards me. You're fucking 8 feet tall, bitch. Not for me. By the time that you're watching this, it's probably my birthday. It's May 21st. That's my birthday. And I just want today to be great. So hopefully I'm able to do that. I'm pre-filming this, obviously, because I don't want to have to do shit on my birthday. And I am going to work. Usually I take the day off of work, but this year I just decided that I, for one, don't have enough PTO because I've had so many different vet appointments and doctor's appointments and all that good stuff that I just don't have enough paid time off to even take a day off. But also because whenever I take the day off, my day doesn't turn out great anyways, so why not just fucking go to work? You know what I mean? So I'm gonna do that and just adult and be an adult. And hopefully I've had a fantastic day, but that's still to be seen. And I love you guys. I hope you have a great day. Bye. The creaking of floorboards is already scarier than fucking shit. My story takes place in Brazil. I used to live in a very haunted house. Not sure why. It was fairly new. Maybe the energy from my neighbors and my convoluted relationship with my mother attracted something. For context, it was a 2-story house with wooden stairs that creak when someone climbed them. That's the worst sound. I mean, honestly. I've had all sorts of weird stuff happen there, from looking in the mirror and seeing a doll that didn't exist besides me, to weird dreams, incubi visits, which I won't address here due to possible trigger warnings, and the constant feeling of being watched through the windows. But one of these events that get to me to this day is the following. I was about 13 years old and woke up at about 3 a.m. one night. I really needed to go to the bathroom, so I stepped out of bed. The second I put my foot on the wooden floor, my dog rose her head, seemingly terrified, and then I heard it. Steps coming up the stairs. All the lights were off, and my mom slept in the room across from mine, so it wasn't her. I immediately got back to bed, picking up my sweet dog, and waited. The noise ceased. Convinced I was imagining things, I tried to put my foot on the floor again, and the steps continued. It was not something coming up the stairs again, it was something resuming its path. I felt an immediate sense of dread and remained sat on the bed, hugging my dog, who was also scared and silently crying. I knew I was in danger. I'm not sure why or how, but I was. I could feel it all over me. And my dog being scared too didn't help. I stayed up until 4 a.m. When I dared to put my foot back down, something in me was telling me it was now okay. And it was. The feeling had disappeared, and there was no noise, just silence. I no longer live in that house, although I still have experiences like this happening around me from time to time. From seeing figures where there is no one and having other people see them too, which confirms to me that I'm not crazy, to having visions of things that later happen in the future. I'm used to the supernatural and spiritual experiences by now, but nothing can beat the heavy feeling of being in that house. It was heavy, cold, dark, and oppressive. I'm glad my mom and I got out. Thank you for the attention and have a good week. Creaking of floorboards is already scarier than fucking shit. So to add into that something that knows you're getting out of bed and consistently resumes its path is absolutely horrific. Thank you, OP, for sending this in. This is really crazy. Now, they did say that this story takes place in Brazil, so I'm not quite sure what an incubi is. I'm gonna have to look at that. It kind of makes me think of an incubus. I don't know if that's truthful or not, so I'm gonna have to look into it. But it really freaks me out that it continued its path. Like, it knew that you were stepping down, it knew that you were stopping, it knew that your foot touched the ground, like something was wrong. That's terrifying, truly terrifying. Haunted houses are always interesting to me because the building itself is haunted, or can the ghost leave? Like, that's my thing. Like, is whatever is there able to pardon itself and just like walk about? Like, why is it specifically there? I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say in the comments about this one. It was very freaky deaky Dutch. This is part of my podcast room. I'm so excited about it still. And I love you guys. I hope you're having a great night. And thank you for letting me take a break yesterday. I really appreciate it. Bye.